absolutely in the mud right now. That's
That's true.
hilarious. After an abysmal start to the year, Gonzalo Pineda is out in Atlanta. Following that, it has been reported that Georgios Giakoumakis, signed just over 1 year ago, has been moved on from the team to a Mexican side, Cruz Azul, I believe, for
Mhm.
just about $10 million. Let's go to our resident Atlanta fan for some thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, I mean Pineda getting the sack was, you know, it was going to happen one way or another. It was just a question of when, not if. I think a lot of people were talking about him. This was his last year on his contract, so a lot of people thought they would just see out the contract and he would move on at the end of the year. Um, Kind of just deeming this a bit of a dead year. But looks like they moved on early, which almost has me a little bit concerned because it makes me feel like they might just try to throw a desperation move in there to try to save this season and save their jobs in the front office. In which case, I don't see that going well. That's like putting band-aids on bullet wounds. Like it's just maybe it like temporarily fixes things, but I don't think it fixes the long-standing problem where this team has continuously looked to have spiraled into a consistently bad form. Like this is the last few years, this is not the same Atlanta that you saw early days, where they were super explosive and exciting and constantly like knocking it out of the park on signings, and the signings meshed well together. And it's like it's not that they haven't done well with certain signings. Like you can't argue Thiago Almada has been a phenomenal signing. Even same with Giakoumakis. But there hasn't been this mesh. There hasn't been like filling in the right needs, especially in the coaching department where it feels like we've consistently swung and missed. So I'm hoping the team takes its time in finding the right replacement for both Giakoumakis and for Pineda. I'll let you jump in here and then we could talk a little bit more about like each one individually if you wanted to dive into it more. I could talk about this at length, but I also don't want this to be a 3 hour episode.
Which it may be because we have a lot to talk about. But first, I want to congratulate you on entering your Taylor Swift era.
What's my
Band-aids
Taylor
don't fix
Swift here?
bullet holes. Nice.
That's a Taylor Swift reference.
Oh my God, you're out here pretending like you don't have it on repeat all night. Yeah,
I'll show you my Spotify. You're not going to see any Taylor Swift in
I
there.
don't
Just
need
I got no
this.
problem with Taylor Swift, but I just don't listen to her.
Get them Swifties.
I thought
Get
I thought you were making like a Travis Kelce reference. I was like, I don't know where this is
'em.
going.
Um, Listen, the Giakoumakis move makes sense. You're going to make a $6 million profit on a 29-year-old striker who's at his peak. Like you can't turn that down
Yeah, while you're
because
sitting third to last in the East.
yeah, 100%, right? Like you're not going to get that opportunity again. We didn't know what he was going to do coming off of that insane, start to his season last year or like start to his MLS career for lack of a better
Yeah.
term. And then he comes out and continues that form, but then gets hurt and somebody from Mexico is like, "Yeah, here's 10 million, we'll take him." You got it, right?
Hmm.
He's not helping, right? You can argue if he's helping you win games or not, right? That's you made that point, but right now you guys are not winning with him on the team. You can use that money to invest other places, right? And we know that in the coming months, really relatively soon, the amount of money from that transfer that you can turn back into spendable funds for this league has increased. So now you're getting more bang for your buck out of that move instead of only getting, half of what you might get now. It's to me, it's a no brainer. Now the Pineda move is something that I think, as you mentioned, was bound to happen eventually. More of a when, if not an if. But currently sitting 13th in the East, 24th overall, no wins in 5 home games. Team that has some of the best talent in the league. I mean, like you mentioned, you had Giakoumakis, you have Thiago Almada, you've got Dax McCarty, you still have Brad Guzan. Like, I mean, you're talking quality players here. But listen, like in all seriousness, you can't have a team like that where you spend that much money and then not perform, right? So I'm with you kind of on both sides of it. But you know what question is coming next? Who comes in and takes over?
Yeah, I
And
figured
first of
that
all,
was coming.
tell me at length. I know you have this at length. Why do you want Robin Fraser? And if not, why do you want Hernan Lasada?
I actually want Frank DeBoer back. I hear he's available.
No.
The Frank DeBoer era is underrated, and we can get back to that.
That's so funny.
I haven't put much thought into a replacement because I would rather the team go with an interim manager for the rest of the season. You know what? I don't know if I believe that actually, because it's so easy to make the playoffs. Like, even though we're 13th and spiraling out of control, we're 3 points off the playing game right now. So, like, it's so easy to make the right signing here, get on a run, and do damage in the cup playoffs, and still easily make the cup playoffs too. Um, so there is encouragement to find someone new like now. So I'm gonna scratch my original idea of going with an interim manager for the rest of the season and
You have
being
done this
patient.
so many times. You're like,
Well,
I don't know.
I'm
I
just
don't know. I really haven't thought about it. Actually, scratch that. I've got an idea.
that's how my brain works. All right, you're just following the process of my brain. Um, I'd have to think about who's available. I mean, I hear Pochettino's available. Don't know
Stop.
if he's open to the job.
Stop it.
Um, Let me get back to you on names, but I would say they should go for a manager quickly because you could turn around this season very easily. We've seen it before with other teams. So if they can get another DP to replace Giakoumakis and get in a new head coach that's going to make things work, then I think this team could still easily make the playoffs and make a push. I think Supporter Shield's probably out of the picture at this point, but I guess there's also the question of Thiago Almada leaving in the summer and replacing him as well. Uh,
All right. I'm going to let you
I
think about it
yeah.
because here's what I'll say. Also, think about Giakoumakis' replacement because, spoiler alert, that question's coming soon.
I
This
already
isn't
started talking about that.
this isn't a Nashville, right? I don't think that an MLS veteran that we joked about earlier is the right fit here. I think there's too many internationals of relatively high pedigree that need somebody else. And the original rumor was that the former boss of Al Ittihad, Marcelo Gallardo, was kind of on the radar here. But unfortunately, it seems like he's being tempted by the likes of AC Milan or Barcelona. So I don't know. I mean, probably Milan because I don't think Brocolona can actually pay him.
Oh, you'd be surprised. They got more levers to pull.
They can't register 9 players. They're like 2 months out of the season. They can't register 9 players.
Side note, really quick. I just Googled on transfer or I searched on transfer market for available managers right now.
Mm-hmm.
The first I don't know if this is no, it's not sorted. The first four managers that came up, the
All former
last club that
Chelsea.
they were listed with,
Yeah,
Chelsea, 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 Chelsea.
yeah. I've seen those. I've been using that as well. So that being said, I also don't see like a European target making his way here. So like a Lampard or a Graham Potter or like a how Dean Smith came to Charlotte, like that would be like Frank de Boer coming here. He'd be very rigid. He wouldn't let the team flow. So what I really think you need is some South American influence, right? And one name that popped up to me in my search of coaches here was somebody like Diego Cocha, I believe is how you pronounce that. He's the former Mexican national team manager. He's worked through Liga MX, he's worked through the Argentinian league, and I think he would be a really good fit here. I think he could attract players from South America and Mexico to play under him and make Atlanta fun again. I think it's a decent shout. And then if you're going to go for a long shot, right? I mean, Pacha's there, but Jorge Samaioli, who worked through South America and Europe while also coaching like Chile and Argentina and that kind of group. Even though he'll probably have more European ambitions, I think that could be a good get to continue the influence of those South American players coming to your team. I think those two might be pretty good names, but I think Cocha, the Mexican national team manager, might be the guy I would target if I'm in this position.
I almost feel like the team doesn't want to necessarily go down the road of like the South American road again because I feel like all of the signings have started to like slowly shift towards Europe. I mean, I'm thinking like obviously Giakoumakis. came over from Scotland. I'm thinking of like Bartosz Slisz, John Gregerson. I'm thinking Tristan Mayumba, Jean de Silva. All of those guys came over from Europe, not South America. So I feel like there's been a shift. So if they're going to stick with that route, then I don't necessarily, I would not be surprised if they went down the route of looking for a European manager as opposed to going for like Kocha, like you said, who's going to bring more South America influence where that may not necessarily work with the guys that are they're looking to bring in. But that's a question for getting the head coach and the front office on the same page, which I feel like has been an issue for them for years now. So we'll see if that's realistic.
Good. Well, let's go to the more difficult question then, and who replaces Giakoumakis, right? So
Uh
there,
he's
listen, you can't just pop up a list of available strikers online and be like, let me
watch
find
me.
somebody who scores a goal every 120 minutes and just sign it. Like this isn't FIFA, right?
Why not?
Well, because I said so, and because real life is. I know. In case you haven't noticed, I kind of have a real life job, and I kind of know how these things work. So,
Uh-huh.
question, yeah. Tell me what you think.
So you're what you're saying is that I can't just Google contracts expiring and then
Oh
just
no,
search
no.
for the
You
highest
can
market value striker.
you can absolutely look for it. Signing them
Hmm.
is a completely different bag of tricks.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a tough call. Um, I would think so. Like instinct tells me to look for like South American players because that was the bread and butter at the start, and that was the bread and butter that got us so much success. But considering the track record they've had in the last year or so, I'm not too sure that that's the route they're going to go. I'm looking at a list of players whose contract are ending. I would think presumably at the end of this month. A couple names. Gabigol is in there. Gabriel Barbosa. Probably unrealistic. Maybe somebody like maybe like a Mishi Batshuayi could be a fun one. But yeah, not a lot of names jumping out of the list here for me.
Well, let me run you down my thought process here, and you know, you don't have to even look outside the league because right now it's rumored that Leo Campagna is on the trading block from Miami. And if that's true, I'm sending as much gam as I can faster than having Grace chase down a squirrel. Like he knows the league. He works well with good service from decent Argentinian players, right? Which both the guy over in Messi land or whatever, that guy is all right. And so is this Almada kid.
Yeah,
And
but Amada's going to be gone.
you don't know that. That's not confirmed.
I do know he's 100% he's gone by the
Where?
at least by the end of the season.
Where?
What do you where? To Europe.
Exactly. You don't know because it's not confirmed. But here's the other thing. He's an aerial threat, man. He's good in the air. He knows the league. He can play against he's proven he can win balls in the air against these defenders. I think if that's the case, that's where I'm going. Now, if you do want to look at somebody outside of the league with expiring contracts, which you were just mentioning, this guy, Memphis Depay, out of contract and somebody who I think can excel greatly in Atlanta. Now, unrealistic as it may be, I tweeted out like, "Oh, I'd throw a bag at him," and people were all over me like, "Oh yeah, like not happening." Sure, but that's if I'm thinking like who might fit well there. He's a guy there, and like you mentioned, I've said for years now somebody should make a run at Mishi Batshuayi. Right, that dude could make any MLS team better, and his contract's up soon as well. So listen, here's what I'll say. We're not going to know who this replacement striker is until the new coach is signed. I don't think they're going to sign a striker before the coach has a say.
I hope not.
Yeah, which would be terrible. So I think get used to seeing Daniel Rios leading the line because that's more likely what you're about to see.
It's super exciting. That'll get the 60,000 and Mercedes Benz off their feet.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question here about Atlanta, and then we'll move on. What does this mean for the rest of Atlanta's season? Is it over? Do they have hope? And I know you kind of hinted at this already, but talk to me about like specifics.
If they look to sign a new manager uh relatively quickly, I would say season's definitely not over. If they are going with a caretaker manager for the rest of the season, Nothing. I'll never say that it's over because 9 teams make the playoffs in each conference, so it's very, very possible that the team could still get in the playoffs. But I think if they go interim manager, that's kind of their way of waving the white flag and being like, all right, well, whatever happens this season, we don't really care. We're just going to build towards next season. Which, at this point, I'm not necessarily against that decision because I'm assuming Almada's gone in the summer. Giakoumakis is gone now. Head coach is out. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think if you rush it, you're just screwing yourself up for the long term. So I'm not against that decision if they go with it, but I would say the manager signing is going to be the indicator of whether or not they're going to continue to push for this season.
Yeah, here for me, there's not a ton to worry about here now, and this is why Nutmeg Soccer, a very good account on Twitter, suggest many people go follow it. I enjoy them a lot. Um, they posted this good graphic on XG differentials per 90 minutes. Atlanta are sixth on the list in XG versus XG against in terms of like positive. They have the sixth most expected goals compared to what they give up. They're creating chances and they're not giving up a ton. They're just not finishing and they're getting really bad bounces at the beginning of this year, right? I think on Major League Journeyman, Dak was talking about like they played Charlotte and they were crushing them. And they hit the post and they had a good save by Kalina. And then they come down the other way. Their first attack, they serve it into the box. One of the Charlotte guys comes across and like turns his back. It hits off his ass and goes off the post and in. Like just weird stuff like that is never going to stand up the long test of time, right? So combine that with the fact they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot with a little less than 20 games left to go. I think they're okay. And I'm glad they didn't wait to make this change because, they're going to avoid the complacency. It's going to kickstart that team to ride this new coach wave, get on a little bit of a run and get into the playoff spot even before Leagues Cup break, which would be massive, right? That's a huge, if you can get in before we take a full reset break, it puts you in a great spot. So I wouldn't be terrified at all if I was Atlanta. I'd be actually kind of, I don't know if I'd say excited, but like I'd have a positive outlook that they'd turn this around.
My only concern is the mentality part of it. If we saw what it happened with we saw what happened last year with Austin, where I think mentality played a huge part in them being unsuccessful. And I could see that happening with Atlanta. I'd say a pretty big difference though is the leadership aspect in Atlanta. You got guys like Dax and Brad Guzan who are super experienced and can hopefully help the team avoid that from happening. But there is a lot of work to be done for this team to still be able to fully turn it around and be competitive in the playoffs if they do make it, because you're potentially looking at replacing two guys who have literally carried this team on their back for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
So that is a plus a head coach. So there's a lot to do as much as there is not a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and it'll definitely be something to take a look at, and definitely something to keep an eye on. But I'm not worried for this team. I think that the law of averages plays out, and they'll be okay. A team that I think is probably in a little bit less of a good spot is